The deeper layers of consent. In this video, we're taking a deep dive into unconsciously consent and the conscious consent, what we can do individually and as a collective. Thank you for being here. Let's dive right on in. So, what do we consent to when we are unconscious, when we don't have a choice, when we don't remember? And what does this look like on an individual perspective and as a collective? So, the information that's coming forward, and the number one piece here before we go any further, is to tune into your own heart and energy. See what resonates with you. We need to let go of the guru complex. There is no guru. We've got to stop this. We have to stop this. It is all about using our discernment. So that's the number one before we go any further into this video. So as a species, we know, and many of you have already know this for decades, and some of you are awakening to this now, that humanity, this whole game was originally the original divine blueprint of Earth, where we came in as a soul and we would learn. And it's so beautiful on Earth because of all the senses that are here and the beauty and the nature and the animals. So we would learn, we picked our family, the time of birth, also our exit point, and we would go through layers through emotions, through feelings, through lessons, experiences, and while being in this beautiful place, Earth, Gaia. And we would forget. So when we come through, part of that is that we would forget the consciousness of love, the oneness, the unity, because we wanted to take the deep dive of what it felt individually, the lessons, the cycles, the patterns. However, it did not play out like this. It was energies and entities that came in, also known as the feeders, that copied the original divine blueprint and flipped it. And the basis of this is on cults and rituals. It is the feeding off of humans. It's their light. So this also goes back to basis on children, because children are pure. Now, this is through many layers, through this very complex false matrix. You have there's a hierarchy within the cults. And you can see this is in religion, it's in politics, and all the structures. It's in Hollywood, it's with CEOs, it's with the billionaires, it's with all of this. However, this also goes down through all the systems. So you don't have to be rich or a multimillionaire to also be doing these horrible practices of rituals of feeding off the light of children, women, men, and animals. It's through books that you may be reading. It's through, and what we're diving into now is unconsciously how we have been kept asleep. So first is through all the structures. So food. They found a way food was always organic. And then the chemicals started coming in, the pesticides. So spraying everything so that when we eat this and ingest it, it actually is a poisoning to our light, to our physical vessel. And then it goes into the healthcare we all know this. However, this is a message for those that really don't know this or maybe want to take a bit of a deeper dive. And then it goes into the healthcare and the prescriptions and all of this to try to maintain our health, when it was long ago, we knew it was through community, through support, through plant medicine, through this beautiful sun. It was through movement of our body. It was through voice. And we knew all this. But everything was flipped upside down. They continued through the poisoning in the food system. It's the poisoning in the air. It's putting plastic. Plastic is everywhere. It's in the clothing. It's through And then they changed the belief systems as well. So the plastic continues through everything. I mean, you can hold a cup, a water plastic bottle. It's plastic we see everywhere. It's also the belief system. So they brought in religion. And the main purpose of all of this is separation. It's all about separation and divide. So also it's about distraction. So it's through pulp culture. And so as we're listening to music, when you're unconscious, you love the beat, maybe you love the artist. But when we begin to awaken and the veils begin to dissolve, we're actually looking at the words in the song. And some of us are taken back. We're like, oh my gosh. And we're looking around to maybe if you're in a concert and you're like, is anyone else seeing this? Anyone else hearing this? They're talking about a ritual. They're talking about blood. And everyone else is unconscious. But this is what's happening is that currently in 2026, when this is recorded, and guess what? This is the full moon in June. Of course it is. It is the veils that are coming up to be dissolved. So many veils are being dissolved. So within this, as each of us have our awakenings. Now, when we have our awakening, first it is so many, it can be multiple dark night of the souls. Dark, dark, dark night of the soul. And then there are layers within this that for many, you've done the deep shadow work. You've gone in, you've taken a look at the patterns, the cycles, you've released this. It can be epiphanies. And this is a roller coaster. It's quite a ride to go through this. And then it comes to the realization of self-love, releasing the people-pleasing tendencies. And when we arrive at the self-love piece, because through the programming here in the false matrix, self-love is selfish, but it's not. When you arrive to the self-love piece, that's when you may be leaving the relationship that may be long-term or friendships or family that you love yourself enough to say no more to. It could be emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. It could be spiritual, whatever that looks like. You're saying no more to that treatment and you love yourself enough. You respect yourself enough. And through that process, loving oneself, that's a whole other journey that you step into. Now, what is happening unconsciously as a species? We weren't given a choice with this flipping. However, now as the veils are dissolving, there is a choice. And it's very important that many that have awakened and have come to the realizations that, regarding, let's say, politics, voting has never mattered. Voting has never mattered because it is the feeders, the ones that are currently ruling the 3D earth, that they already put in place who the leaders are. And they manipulate and control those leaders. I mean, we also know they manipulate and control the weather, tornadoes. It's not always organically done with the earth. What comes to the point here is that as the veils are being dissolved, there are many truths that are going to be coming forward. Let's take sports, for example. There's been a lot of pushback from some souls regarding the sports. And I get it, especially for those of us that were unconscious. And it could have been years ago, decades ago, that, we go to our children's sports game, or we're the coaches, right? We might have volunteered and we're so excited for our kids to play. And maybe soccer, maybe that's football, maybe that's hockey, maybe that's dance, maybe that's cross-country running, track and field, whatever that looks like. So we volunteer, we're excited, and we're in that, but we're unconscious of what is really going on behind the scenes. We've seen pieces of this in gymnastics. There's sexual abuse. We've seen many other sports teams coming forward, communicating that they were made to do horrible acts to get ahead. And so we've seen pieces of this. However, this is the year of the fire horse. It's 2026, 2027, and 2028 that the veils are all dissolving. And regarding sports, it's a distraction, especially for many of the males, to sit and watch, cheer on a team, but you're distracted. So we're not with family and friends necessarily in a loving environment with no TV, no media. You're being plugged into a system where they're actually feeding off your energy. They're feeding off your light, where then you're tuned in unconsciously. And then we're feeding a system that at the base of it is all about cults, rituals, and feeding off the light of children, women, men, and animals. So there is a lot of pushback coming up and disbelief saying, okay, well, I've coached and I took my kids to this and I was part of this and I don't agree with what you're saying. This is the bigger picture of what's happening here on earth. And so regarding consent, first, it is not a one size fits all. We need to know this. This is not a one size fits all. This is through our awakenings, going into our own deep dives of the rabbit holes of information, that eventually you're going to come to what sits for you. And this is going to continue. So it may be, I no longer consent to, I want to be eating organically. And some of you may be thinking, I can barely manage to even afford food right now, let alone even thinking organic. But it is the understanding that, let's say you have 2 tomatoes at the same price, one's organic, one's not organic, is consciously choosing the one that doesn't have the pesticides on it. Or I'm going to grow my own food. I actually have a patio now that I can grow my own food. It's something along those lines where consciously we're going to say, no, we don't agree with what's happening to our food. And then it also goes into the clothing. So you may be, the veil's dissolved and you're like, oh my gosh, the name brands. Yeah, I don't consent to that. I can get the same clothing and they put a label on it and they've jacked it up $100. I don't consent to that anymore. Or I don't consent to the belief that I actually felt better when I had this brand on, or I had this purse, or I had those shoes. That ego part is dissolved and the truth arrives. So it is also understanding about the materials that we wear, the plastics that are in it. The plastic is poison. It's understanding what we're inhaling and ingesting and drinking. The alcohol, it's the sugar, it's the pop, it's poison. So it's understanding this, and it's step by step. It's very overwhelming if it's all at once. And if a sports comes on, let's say there's a football game, and your partner's there watching that, it's not shaking, the partners or humanity and saying, wake up, look what's going on, wake up. It's an individual process. You saying, I no longer consent that. I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch that movie. I don't want to watch that TV show. I don't want to read that book that I know exactly about that author and what's going on behind the scenes. So it's really taking off the blinders, and that we no longer give consent on an individual basis. Now, as a collective, we're going to be seeing this dramatically over the next 3 years. And for those souls that have known this for a really long time, and you may have been quiet, you've been seeing the whole unraveling of what's been happening on Earth, but you've taken a step back and have been in observation mode. And you knew there was a time coming where there was codes within you. There was part of your mission and purpose. You maybe didn't know what it was, but it may be coming now. That maybe it's on a certain portal. Maybe it's on a full moon or new moon. Maybe it's on a certain energetic date where a huge amount of light comes in, where you get the information, the codes, they come online. And you are going to lead a rally of we do not consent. Maybe it's you creating a video saying, look what's in this chocolate bar. Do you see what's in this chocolate bar? How can they even be making this and giving this to humanity? So it is this that's coming in. Maybe you're going to be leading a group. So it's this information as a collective that we're going to be coming together. And it is the remembrance of using our discernment. It is the remembrance of always tuning within, following our heart. And we're going to be seeing this over and over, a divide. The whole intention of the false matrix is to keep us distracted, to feed off of our light, and to keep us unconscious. These physical vessels that we're in, it's a web of light that's inside. It's a web of light. And when we no longer eat the chips, we drink the pop, the alcohol, we attune more to our light and it gets brighter. We become more clear. And becomes very intuitive, not only with exercise, we release the exercising as well, too, and how it's, I need to be losing this many pounds. I need to be getting up a certain time. I need to go to bed. I need to get 8 hours of sleep. We release all of these outdated beliefs. And we move intuitively what it looks like to live from our hearts, from our own energy, from our light. And this is going to be looking different to each one of us. You may only need 3 hours of sleep, do a bit of work, and go back for another 3. You may find that you move differently now. Your exercise may look like dancing in the grass and then going for a bike ride. You may want to be going swimming and then maybe a bit of Tai Chi. So it really is different for each one of us. Again, it's not a one size fits all. Through the consent and maybe gradually that you say, I'm not going to vote and be part of this game anymore. I'm not doing this. I'm not going to feed my energy into that system anymore. And you maybe with sports, I'm not going to watch the football games anymore. I'm not going to feed that. It's all to distract me. I'm not going to listen to those artists. I'm going to listen to this artist that I align with, that lights me up, that has a certain frequency. So we each tune within. We no longer give our power away. It is using our discernment. It is as a collective, though, as a species, there will be more and more and more that say, we do not consent to what this whole false matrix, the 3D, is based on. And that is the abuse, the feeding off of children's light and the animals and the women and men. This is going to be dissolving. So it's very, very important to tune within. And it's also understanding that emotions are really going to be rising over these next 3 years. It's going to be getting very, very heated. So where do you want to tune your energy into? Where do we want to place our energy? And knowing that every time that we tune within and we align to our own intuition and listen to our bodies and our energy, that we're really increasing our light. We're tuning into our own light-filled bodies. We're awakening to our multidimensional aspects of self. And this is exciting. When we move into this route, no longer feed the 3D false matrix system, and we move into the alignment of our own intuition flowing within, the light increases and we have the most magical, expansive experiences that light us up, that get us excited, where we are deeply grateful for this beautiful planet. And as we see this continuing to flow forward, there, again, is a remembrance of the distraction and the divide. And also other people, you may be witnessing this through media, that others are going to be saying, well, don't watch this person, or watch out for this one, watch out for their following, watch out for this. All that will be revealed. But it's not about outcasting. We're done with that. We've seen this throughout the centuries. We've seen how this has played out. It really is to remember that we're coming together as a species. It's no longer the divide of countries and borders. and the color of our skin and what sex we are, if we're male or female, what religion we are. All of that is meant to divide us. And when we look at it from a much bigger viewpoint, and we are a species called humanity, and we have deep compassion and love, let's detach from those systems now and tune within what that looks like for you. And as we do so and trust the process, trust our bodies, trust our teams of support, trust our highest self. When we move into this, there is greater flow. And then we begin bridging the systems to the new earth. This is happening. The dimensional shift is going to happen. But right now, we're focusing on what do we consent to and what do we not consent to. Blessings of love and light to all. Namaste.